Good morning, third graders. I'm here today to talk to you about how we're going to turn our amazing animal research into an informational essay. It's going to be awesome. Really, what we're going to do is write paragraphs. We've been writing paragraphs all year. You guys are experts at paragraphs. I do have a few tips. Okay, so let's take a look at the writing tips that I have for you. It says here, look at this list of transition words and phrases. We've talked a lot about transition words this year, and I found this simple list right here to help you. All right, so this list comes from Reading Rockets, and it has some good ways to think about how to organize your writing. First of all, some paragraphs, work well when we put them in sequence. That's like saying what happens first, what happens second, what happens third. That means we could also use words like afterwards, at first, at last, before, or finally. I love how all of these words are right here to help me. Sometimes I'm going to need to be explaining about the location of something, like maybe a habitat. Things like above, across, around, behind, beside, between, inside, near, over, or under could be helpful. If I need to give a sense of time, like what different parts of the life of my animal are like, I might need to use these time words like meanwhile, soon, then, today, later, next week, suddenly, yesterday, until. Other times I might use phrases that give more information, like I'm going to tell you more. Besides, furthermore, in addition, and in fact can be great words for that. Finally, I need to wrap up each and every paragraph I write. I don't always want to use the same thing. So I might want to say in conclusion instead of finally. Could try lastly or to sum up. I'm going to leave this tab open now so that I can refer back to it when I'm ready. Let's go back to that writing tips page. All right, after it says, look at the list of transition words, it also says, use your research slides. If I already put the information in my own words, I copied and pasted. That's kind of a little tip. Say your ideas out loud, maybe to a stuffed animal, and then type what you said. All right, to give you an idea of the kind of writing we're going to do today, let's look at the examples. Here are the examples about the giant panda that Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Sowash, and myself have written. We've added some extra information to help you. The first paragraph that I wrote is over here, but there's some directions right here. Today we are putting it together. Now that we have all the information, let's put the information into paragraph form. We're going to go back and look at the information you found and place it into paragraphs. You've already done all the thinking part. Now we just need to fix it up and make it fit together as a paragraph. Make sure to interest your reader. Make it as interesting as possible. I really focused on that, especially in this first part called the introduction. Introduction. In this paragraph, open with a hook. We've talked about using a hook before during the year. It's fun to start with a question or a fact. Then tell your reader what will be included in the rest of your paragraphs. I thought this was really helpful, and I looked back at this several times. Here's an additional tip. You can use an idea from, I think I have the most awesome animal, day 6 slides. So that's actually the work that we did yesterday. And I've already pulled day 6 slides up. I have it here in this other tab. So from my day 6 slides, I think I have the most awesome animal. That's really the second slide that I made. I'm just going to read those 4 tips to put them in the 4 things to put them in my mind. There are 1,864 pandas in the wild. They are vulnerable, not endangered. I thought that was so interesting when I was looking on the websites. Remember on the Smithsonian site, And it had this whole thing here about conservation status, like animals that are of the least concern, near threatened, vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, extinct in the wild, extinct. We, of course, weren't looking at any extinct animals. I had always thought that the panda was endangered. It surprised me that it was vulnerable. So I made sure that I put that here in my slide. The pandas might not live alone, but they have groups that are like a neighborhood. That seems kind of interesting, but maybe not quite as good as that first one. Pandas are bears that only eat plants. Pandas mostly live alone in a foggy forest. Okay, so I went and looked back at those slides to help me think. Let's take a look at the final paragraph, and then I'm going to give you some hints and ideas of how I wrote that. What's black and white and red all over? A panda reading the newspaper, of course. Pandas are a vulnerable species on Earth. Did you know there are only 1,800 of them living in China? That's right. There are many other fascinating features that make pandas special. Once you know more about them, you'll be ready to help them survive. Okay, here I've given you some tips on writing an introduction. Let's read through them, and then we're going to see how I put that together. Tip: remember, a paragraph for an introduction is about 5 sentences long, and the goal is to hook the reader, make it interesting. Start with the topic, write sentences that help the reader look forward to learning more. The last sentence or two wraps the paragraph up. Okay, that with the directions to start with a question or a fact. So that I thought, I really like the idea of a question, but wouldn't a joke be even better? And for some reason, this whole thing about pandas being black and white was really standing out in my mind. So that's how I got the idea of the joke. What is black and white and red? Really, I don't want that one. I want to use the color. It's a pun on the word red and red. Red like the color and red like I read the newspaper. And red all over. So the joke always, if you know the joke is like blah, blah, blah reading a newspaper, right? So what's black and white and red all over? And my answer was a panda reading the newspaper. And I put, of course, so that you would recognize that I was kind of making a joke there. Now, as you can see, whoa, friends, as I'm typing, that sentence alone took up a lot of the space. So I might already be thinking, size 24 font is too big. Let's make it 18 so I can fit all my ideas. So one thing I need to do, because this spacing is pretty small here, is I need to be thinking about that. The other thing I did so that I'd have more space for the second paragraph is I took this text box and I slid it up on the page a little bit. Okay. I liked that introduction. I thought it was so clever. You might not think so. You might want to be more serious than that. But I thought that would be kind of a silly way to get people interested. And it started with this fun question or fact. Okay, there are some other ways to get started. I could tell a story about my animal, a personal story, like seeing one in a zoo, or an important story about why they're so endangered. I could start with, instead of a question like this, giving a strong opinion about my animal. Also, if I can find a surprising fact that most people don't know about my animal, that could be a really good way to hook my reader. I'm going to stick with my what's black and white and red all over, but you might want to try a surprising or interesting fact instead. Remember, you can get that from yesterday's work. Let's go back to that, because you're going to notice that this information here, there are 1,864 pandas in the wild. They are vulnerable, not endangered, is information that I chose to use. So one thing I could do is I can think, Is this already in my own words? Did I take the time when I was doing the research to type it into my words, or did I copy almost exactly from the website? Kind of feel like this was a little bit maybe too close to the website. So rather than making a copy of this sentence, I tried typing it into my own words. So instead, I wanted to kind of use a round number. I'm not trying to be too exact here in the first paragraph. Really, the interesting idea to me is that pandas are vulnerable, not endangered. So, pandas are a vulnerable species. There are only about 1,800 of them living in the wild. So, this is how I was working on building my sentence. Okay. And maybe I include another sentence here, but I already have 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences. And an introduction doesn't need to be quite as long as the rest of my work. And it doesn't seem as interesting and I'm not quite sure what my other paragraphs are going to be about, but I know they're all going to be about the panda. So I really kind of think that even invulnerable means that they need people's help to survive. So read on to find out ways to help these, here's my opinion, beautiful animals survive. Actually, friends, I probably could have left that in the bigger font.